Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet again of another episode of Worth the Hype, right? Episode number 4, right? So today, as you can see from the title, we're going to talk to you about Tag Heuer Formula One, right? A relaunch that happened very, very recently. All right. For those who do not know, Tag Heuer Formula One is a very, very iconic watch. It is actually a watch that actually first feature the brand Tag Heuer, right? Before that, it was just Heuer, and then when Tag Heuer got together, this is one of the first watches that was launched under this new name, right? And for those who are racing fans or Formula One fan, which both Woody and I are as well, this watch you will definitely remember when you were young, or you've seen it in the past as well. It's that very funky, uh, eye-catching, polarizing watch that has existed for a very, very long time. Right. So, anything you want to add on, Woody?
I think the thing of how to think about the original Tag Heuer Formula One, it was pretty much the Moonswatch of its time, right?
Mm.
At that point in time, I think it was the 80s. We had the quartz revival, the mechanical revival post quartz, and this was one of those quartz timepieces that Tag Heuer used to make entry into a bigger market. And it was actually very successful in its time. And someone who is from that era, and being a Formula One fan, right? This design, even as I got introduced to watches, it always used to catch my eye as I was growing up. That whole tire-like bezel that's around the watch, even as it evolved, it's always appealed to me. So there might be a little bit of my bias creeping in, positive bias creeping into this particular episode. So we'll wait and see how that goes.
Fair enough. All right, let's jump straight into it then in terms of the scoring, right? So as you can see from the screen here, you know the drill. First criteria, is it worth it at retail, right? As you know that Woody and I are Malaysian, so pardon me that both of our price in our heads, or at least in my head, it's on a ringgit, right? So the retail price for it is around 7,000 plus. Which has two different variants with a rubber strap and in a stainless steel bracelet as well. The price difference between both are very, very, very minor. I believe it's like 300 ringgit from a rubber strap to a stainless steel bracelet, which is quite ridiculous if you ask me. The rubber price is rubber strap. Its variant is incredibly overpriced for it. I guess that's one way to upsell you to the stainless steel bracelet. However, not however, on top of that, the price jump from the previous Formula One with the versus the current variant, the current modern version of the Formula One, it's crazy different, right? People often associate with the Moonswatch prices as well, which is at about 1,000 plus ringgit, and this is 7 times the price of that. Yes, you do get something that's a little bit more history, and it is under Tag Heuer. It's not under a Swatch. Maybe you could argue that's a little bit different as well. And if you have watched one of the podcast episodes that we talk about as well, let's just say if you compare it to another solar quartz movement watch, it is around that price point, I guess. However, then again, if I just look at it all in all, I've tried my very best to see if I could give it a 0.5, but just looking at how things it would be and how it evolves from the old variant to the new variant, it is ultimately a 0 for me. I just think that this is something that tech eventually, not really tries hard to maximize the profit at this price point. So yeah, looking at how you could still get a vintage variant of this at a very cheap price, I would say it's a 0 for me. Yeah.
So,
over to you. Yep.
Full disclosure, right? When this watch first got released, or even as the hype started to build for release, and I remember having conversations with James on this, I'm actually interested to see what it is, and I might even be considering one. And even when the price dropped, I let that bias stew for a while, right? And it's go like, why not? But I think what then hit me is the fact that I was keenly looking forward to the limited edition ones, right? Instead of the regular ones. Because the regular ones, well, by virtue of the name, you could get them later as well. But then I think even the way that they did the limited edition ones seemed nice on paper. And it was all on the same price anyway. But it's also for that it became the problem. Because what you will now see, if you look across the line, there are some versions, as what James alluded to, is operating at about 1,800 to 1,900. Most of them are 1,800 US dollars. Even the limited edition ones where the whole case has that plastic-esque type of case material and a full rubber design cost the same, right? So there is no differentiation that's offered no matter what the material is. I think it's a missed opportunity. And that made me feel like the only one, maybe even in my biased eyes, worth getting is the Silverstone one, the green one with a steel bracelet. But even then, I find myself asking this question, right? 1,900 or, as James mentioned, 7,000 to 8,000 ringgit. I can get 6 to 7 Moonswatches and have a good laugh with it, right? I could change that every single day, put a smile on my face, a Snoopy on one day, a pink one another day, a red one another day, and it will give the same level of joy. I just can't see myself giving this anything other than a 0 now, right? So even though I will admit, when it first came out, I did consider it, but even hand on heart, I cannot say it's worth it. It's purely an enthusiast appeal. And that sentimental feel to wanting something that I saw when I was younger that makes me want to buy it. But do I think it's worth it? No. That's how I look at it.
Right. Before the next criteria, another thing that Woody mentioned as well, there's a very bunch of limited edition selected Formula One Grand Prix that they've launched off, right? You have the Miami edition, the Singapore Grand Prix, the Silverstone Grand Prix, and so on. When I first saw that, I actually was excited as well, because I am going to the Singapore Grand Prix this year, and I thought you can only purchase it at the Singapore Grand Prix to me, which makes sense, right? That it's a true limited edition where it's location based and it's very much tied to Formula One, which is the essence of it. And me being a Formula One fan, that is, you can say maybe is a way to self-justify myself to purchase it, but that is something that would get me excited with, right? However, with the recent launch of the Miami version, I remember it was late. It was 3-4 a.m. here in Singapore, and I was messaging Woody and said, "Hey, it is available online right now, and you can actually buy the Miami Grand Prix version in anywhere." We checked it in Singapore, in Malaysia, and several other countries as well. It is, yeah. So that's, to me, makes me feel that it lost the novelty of it, and in a way, to a certain extent, it kind of turns me off as well. So yeah, I think that's definitely a missed opportunity, and how they could play off the limited edition is definitely wasted. So yeah, just want to add in that point as well.
I agree. In fact, if I were to do this all over again, I would have told them, you've got 20 races this year. You could have had a chance to do 20 different versions, right? And release them. And people, the collectors watch collectors, either will get one that resonates the most with them, or they would just even want to get as many as they can, right? So that's just strange. I find that such a waste. But anyway, that's just me.
Fair enough. All right, down to the next criteria. Is it worth it on a secondary market, right? At the moment, it is still new, so the secondary market at this point, it is not lower than retail. So with the same logic that I've mentioned in episode 3, it ultimately going to yield a 0 for me, right? I would say in this area, for future reference, it may actually drop down, and I'm hoping it does. If it actually drops down to, say, 20-30% below retail, this is something that actually may personally sway me to change this to at least a 0.5 or 1. However, with the existing vintage version of this available right now, I would say you're better off buying that, right? You're better off buying, if you really want something that is really linked to a Formula One and a great watch and so on, you're better off buying a vintage Monaco, right? If you could fit that in your wrist. There's many other Formula One related watch or racing related watch that you could indulge in. That is arguably a way better watch, a proper watch, at maybe a similar price point or just a minor top up, right? So yes, ultimately it's a 0 for me.
I think it's a good point that you raised. So I was just looking just this morning at the prices online, right, on the second-hand market. There are listings starting to come up where you have that 15-20% drop for the regular production versions already. There's still a premium for the limited edition ones, but even that's like 10-15%. So wisdom will tell you that over time, it may be worth considering. But in this current market, as of the time of which we are recording it, I think it's still too soon to buy it from the secondary market. I think you should give it some time, and maybe then it's worth it. So in this current time and age, I would still give it a 0 because it's not worth it yet in the secondary market. And I echo what James said. Now I'm a fan of the Carrera. I happen to be wearing a neo vintage Carrera on my wrist right now, but I think you could actually get older, and Carrera is a very motorsport linked name anyway. You could get a Tag Heuer Carrera secondhand easily for the prices that these watches are asking for, and a fully serviceable mechanical watch with a proven movement as well. I think the value is actually there. It's not going to be in the current Tag Heuer. I was contemplating this, James, as you were talking about, like the very vintage Formula Ones that these watches are modeled after. There is the concern that it is a 30-year-old quartz movement as well. So the serviceability may become an issue there. I actually think there's the recent, before this particular version of Tag Heuer Formula Ones, there are quite a number of them there. There's great value to be gotten there as well. But of course, the design doesn't have the same iconic feel as the current one does. So that's a to and fro. So for me, if I were to propose an alternative, I'd look at previous second-hand Carreras. Maybe not the chronograph versions. I'm talking about the three-handers and whatnot. You're going to find really, really good deals for those on the second-hand market. That'll be where I put that money into. Back to you, James.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So on the third criteria, aesthetics, right? It's an easy yes for me. I'm just gonna jump straight into it. Like I mentioned, like it's obviously there's biasness over here. Me being a Formula One fan and looking at how iconic it is, how fun it is, how eye-catching it is. It's quite refreshing, right? As a long-time watch collector, you would see so many designs that are just have hints and cues of designs from other variants of watches. However, I have to say that's aside from like Moonwatch, prior to that, you don't really have this funky, fun-looking watch that it's you can say that it's a little bit too out there or it's fun. It very much boils down to preference, but I think it's fun, right? It's just the right amount of fun and the right amount of pop that could really it gives you a reason to add it into your collection that doesn't really have any existing checkbox that you already have, right? So to me, that's a yes, a big yes for me. Yeah.
Well, I alluded to what to the earlier point already. There's just something about the original Formula One with that bezel that still remains across the years, and by virtue that it's a much cleaner look as to what the original was. There's something there in that design, and I'm biased as well. I've always liked the Formula One design. I remember many years ago, before I fell down this rabbit hole of procuring these watches myself, I still like that bezel that's on a Formula One. It's one where no one can say it's derived from something else. It feels right. It feels like the wheel of a car. It feels motorsport. There's something that was done right even from the early days of the Formula One introduction, and it comes out in full here as well. So it's an easy one for me, but I admit there's bias in here, as I did at the start of the episode. I'm shamelessly going to say it's a one for me here. Back to you, James.
Fair enough. Right. So yeah, we both agree on that. That is a one so far. We are all in line. Let's see on the next criteria, right? So on the fourth one, right, horological features, right? To me, it's going to be a 0.5. I've contemplated very hard whether it should be a 0 or not. I think one of the fact that really irks me as well at this watch doesn't have a full loom, right? I believe the original is a full dial loom that's really cool, and I would have wished they kept that in it, right? However, with the new solar quartz right now, I would say that deserves some credit as well. Although it's not really original, it's just basically a slap on as well. But it's something that's really good, right? A solar movement that you have a day's charge in 2 minutes of sunlight. That would really last you for over 10 years, I believe, before you even need to do any changes to your battery. And it's a watch that you could very much be very dependable on it when you need something as a beater, right? So yeah, that gives me a 0.5 for a horological feature. If they have a full loom and everything, maybe I would give it a 1. If they have a mechanical movement, even better. But yeah, ultimately it's just a 0.5 for me over here.
Fair. I think from my end, now here's my thinking about this, right? I'm an intellectual interested enthusiast. So when I look into movements, I actually try and find out where it's from, where are the real standouts, where are the ones that are really pioneering. So when it comes to solar movements, there was a particular brand that some watch journalists called groundbreaking and whatnot, right? And it's a Swiss brand. I basically called BS on that. It's nothing fancy about it, but the hype train went overboard just because it's a solar watch on an iconic thing. Everybody was crazy over it and said that it's so innovative, etc. Right? The truth of the matter is, when it's solar powered innovation, I actually have a watch in my collection from a brand called Citizen that does eco drive, and they've done it to the level of 1 millimeter thickness. That's where the innovation is. This one here is a slap on, as James mentioned, so I don't really think it's great. I think it's nice that a premium Swiss brand is putting a solar watch on an iconic line. It's a good gesture, but it's not innovative. I think the other thing that irks me a little bit as well is I'm very sure the material that's being used on this, whatever they want to rebrand plastic as, right, is also going to be brittle over time. So I'm actually concerned about whether that's considered innovation. Like if you pay 200, 150 to 200 US dollars to 300 US dollars for a Moonswatch and you know it's going to break, right? Yes, it's still an expensive watch, but you know it's going to break. You kind of fit par for the cost. But when you're paying nearly 2,000 US dollars and you're not sure about that, that gives me a pause for thought, right? So for me, it's unfortunately, I have to mark it down to zero. There's nothing there that screams very innovative to me. You're talking about some biodegradable plastic that's hard, whatnot. Swatch has done it. Talk about the movement. I would give my hats off to other brands versus them. But it's still nice. But in that case, it's a zero for me here. A bit harsh this time around, even though my bias is there for Formula One. But that's just how the cookie flies, if you like.
Fair enough. All right. So on the last part, wearability. Right. So wearability for me is like a no-brainer as well. It's a one. Why is it a one? Because this is a great size. Even though some people may complain that it's too small, that it looks like a kid's watch and so on. Maybe if you have a really big Caucasian wrist and so on. However, like I mentioned, this is a very much personal subjective opinion. In my wrist, it wears fine, not too big, not too small. And the best part is if I buy it, both me and my wife are able to wear it. The stainless steel bracelet as well, that's a good addition. I have seen it in Adelaide, Australia, where the AD was kind enough to let me see when it was first launched day one. And it feels great, right? If anything, I definitely vote for the stainless steel bracelet over the rubber easily, right? Um, so yeah, I have nothing else to say, but it's a definitely super wearable watch in any race, gender, size. Yeah.
Well, I've been known to be a huge proponent of the tiny wrist tribe, the folks that have smaller wrists, right? And this set is a kind of a sweet spot where it's not too big, not too small, the 38. And I think for that reason, it will get a one from me. It wears well for people even with smaller wrists. Yes, the people with huge wrists may have a problem with it, but I will take this moment to remind you that the Patek Philippe Calatrava worn by aristocrats and people of wealth was 34 and 31 millimeters when it was first launched. The very first day dates that the presidents wore were 36 millimeters. So yes, you may want to have an oversized watch on your wrist, and that's what makes you a man. But I'm just here to remind you that there are people like us who are not as blessed. And for even those who are not average size, it works pretty well. And it's a fun watch. So it's one of those things that you can get away with it being a bit big or a bit small. It's one of those things that I think deserves credit where it's due. It's the right size for me. Kind of Goldilocks. I would, of course, have a bias that want it smaller, but I've got no complaints there. So it's a full one from me here. Nothing further to add, James.
Perfect. So that rounds up our score to be a 2.5 for me and a 2 for Woody, right? That brings it to a overall of 4.5. Barely making out of the recommend category. So I would say, yeah, buy if the price is right. I would definitely be the one telling you, like, if it's like probably 30-40% cheaper, if I can score a deal out of the secondhand market, I am buying it, right? I am definitely buying it. And I think Woody mentioned as well, both Woody and I are, I would say, contemplating whether we should gun for the Silverstone limited edition. But let's see. I think that's going to be released in July. Um, Silverstone being an iconic circuit as well, that definitely gives me more reason to buy it as well. So yeah, let's see how it goes. Anything else to add on, Woody?
I think this is one of those watches which I know
Mm,
if we record this, let's say 6 months down the road, it will have
mm,
scored that borderline 5 already, which we will say
mm,
buy it if the price is right. In this
mm.
current market, as much as I'm biased towards it, I put the hat on if I'm advising someone, I'd say it's not worth it. So I wouldn't buy it if I were you right now. It's only because I have all the biases that I already have that I would buy it myself. But I'm not going to say that it's worth it on retail or even worth it on secondary market. So I think if you imagine the scoring, right, I would have scored more there if I could agree to that. And that would have tipped it over to the case where we say that if the price is right, buy it already. But in this current market, I think fun can be had elsewhere. So as much as I like it, and as much as there may be a possibility of a Silverstone edition in my collection sometime in the future, at today's prices, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone else. I would recommend it to the stupid version that I stare in the mirror every day. That might work for me, but may not work for you. Your mileage may vary.
Perfect. I think that's a great way to end it. And like the same thing, right? We are 4 episodes in of Worth the Hype, and we have plenty more watches to cover. Drop in the comment, right? DM us, drop in a comment on Instagram and Instagram and YouTube as well. If any particular watches you want us to review, anything you want us to talk about, anything you want us to change, we're happy to take that feedback in, right? But until then, we'll see you in the next episode, right? Bye, guys.
See ya.